I thought it was funny when like a guy at the like towards the very beginning of the movie after the meteor spaceship lands just like whacks it with a shovel. He doesn't know what it is, so he's like, "Yeah, this will work. This is a good way to
That's
figure out what's going on here."
so relatable.
Hello and welcome to Camp Kaiju Monster Movie Podcast. We're your hosts, Matt Levine,
And Vincent Hannum.
and we're talking about all our favorite monster movies, the good, the bad, and the downright campy, and asking if they stand the test of time.
Traditional kaiju creature features, space invaders, the supernatural, and everything in between. All strange beasts are welcome here.
Camp Kaiju is brought to you by Zach Linder and the Zach Pack, powered by Coldwell Banker Realty. Whether you're looking for your dream home, a savvy investment property, or expert guidance in home rehab and flipping, the Zach Pack has you covered.
This could be the beginning of the end for the human race. For what men first thought were meteors or the often ridiculed flying saucers are in reality the flaming vanguard of the invasion from Mars.
Looks like they're going to come out of that gully pretty soon. We'll have to rush our defenses to be ready when they do.
Going to need plenty of reinforcements.
We'll get them. Lieutenant, look! They slashed across country like scythes, wiping out everything that's trying to get away from them.
That explains why communication is cut the moment their machines begin moving.
Montreal's blacked out. Nothing more has come through.
Same thing that happened on the Pacific coast. Anything from them yet?
No, Mr. Secretary, we've had nothing from San Francisco for over 5 hours.
The nations of the world mobilize their armed might, rushing to defend the Earth against the unknown weapons of the super race from the Red Planet. Is there nothing that can stop the Martian death machines?
Guns, tanks, bombs. They're like toys against them.
We know now that we can't beat their machines. Got to beat them. All over the world, human beings cower before the onslaught of these unearthly enemies, whom no one has ever seen. Panic that sweeps around the globe as the great masses of mankind flee blindly in a headlong stampede of hysteria.
We are Camp Kaiju, and yeah, life is good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Am I the camp and you're the kaiju, or is it the other way around?
That's a good question. I feel like I have more kaiju energy, at least tonight. I'm feeling like a strange beast.
Okay. I'll bring the camp then.
Nice. We have to fully lean into this. You should just be as ridiculous as possible, and I'll be a little bit creepy. It'll be great.
I'm doing great, man. So, listeners, Matt and I just had a very lovely chat with Beth Breadlaw and Chris McVillan, who are running and organizing and hosting the Godzilla Mothra Days and Festival in Bloomington, Indiana in June. Mark your calendars. They have guest speakers. They have events. They have vendors. They're showing at the Buzzkirk Chumley Theater, a historic theater in Bloomington, the original Mothra versus Godzilla, and Godzilla Mothra King Ghidorah, All Monsters Attack on the big screen. Links in the show notes, and just really get ready for some great kaiju action.
Absolutely. Sadly, Vincent and I won't be able to go to Mothra and Godzilla Days in Bloomington in June. We also talked a little bit about G-Fest, which will happen in Chicago in July, and we will be there. So I'm excited for that as well.
We will be on the Sunday. It's a Friday through Sunday convention. Matt and I, with Beth and Chris, will be speaking on a couple of panels on the Sunday. So we're very honored and thankful to be a part of that.
Absolutely. There's a lot of other fun stuff coming up. We'll get into that in a little bit on the episode. Before we get into all that, I do just want to thank all of you for hanging out with us, friends. Please do rate and review Camp Kaiju and follow us on patreon.com/Camp Kaiju for additional videos, reviews, merchandise, and more. Other ways you can get in touch are at campkaiju@gmail.com, our website, campkaijupodcast.com, on Instagram, and our voicemail number, which is 612-470-2612. As always, we want to give a very special thank you to our current Patreon members, which include Jason, Chris, Sean, Peggy, our anonymous patron, Don, Steffi, and Jim Cheney. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, patrons. Tonight we're talking about sort of what's seen as one of the classics of the golden age of Hollywood sci-fi, the original War of the Worlds from 1953. We're still at war here on Camp Kaiju. In our last episode, we talked about War of the Gargantuas. Tonight we're talking about War of the Worlds. So a lot of good stuff coming up. Before we get into that, though, we always have our little, trip down memory lane here at the start of each episode on Camp Kaiju. So let's talk about some movies that came out around this time in monster movie history, late May or early June. Vincent, any of these titles jump out at you?
Ooh, they're jumping out at me. I got some jump scares here. Orgy of the Dead, Invasion of the Bee Girls.
Some amazing titles here.
Yeah, I have not seen either of those movies, but Invasion of the Bee Girls from 1973 sounds too good to not watch. Oh, okay. Here's one I'm actually going to shout out. The H-Man from 1959. Matt, do you know this movie?
No, but that's the one I was going to bring up tonight, so I'm happy that you're talking about it.
Oh, yeah. It's directed by Ishiro Honda. It's a science fiction thriller film, special effects by E.G. Tsuburaya. It's not a kaiju movie.
From the plot synopsis, it sounds... maybe not a kaiju, but like a person, like people with like mystical abilities, strange abilities.
It's something to do with radiation and people becoming liquefied and melted.
It sounds cool. I love Ishiro Honda. The story just sounds so interesting. It almost sounds like an X-Files episode or something, people exposed to radiation who can like kill people through touch. I love that idea. Yeah, and I was going to shout out that one, so I'm glad you did so. Now I'm kind of scrambling to talk about something else, but...
Bee Girls. No.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, another title that I was going to talk about is called Undersea Kingdom. This is a serial that came out in 1936. It was from Republic Pictures, so... And this is a serial in 12 chapters.
Wait. Are we talking about the Poverty Row? Republic Studios, yes.
Peter, where did you come from? You jumped out of nowhere.
Boo. Peter, get out of here. Your bit's not till later. Back. Yeah.
It's like Beetlejuice. If you mention Republic Pictures, Peter Lorre is just going to suddenly show up.
I'm back. Stop summoning me. I have to pack my bags.
Okay, sorry, Peter, you have things to focus on. I won't summon you again. I won't mention the name of that B studio again. Always a delight to see Peter, though. I'm excited for him to reappear later in this episode.
I'm glad you saw him. He was just a voice to me.
I might just be hallucinating him after all the time that we spent together when he was living in my apartment. That could very well be it.
That's it.
But I don't know if you or Peter know this serial, Undersea Kingdom. It's in 12 chapters. It was kind of their, I won't say it, that studio's response to Flash Gordon. It's about the search for Atlantis. I mean, it's, if it's 12 chapters, how long is it? Like 226 minutes. So that's like three and a half, almost 4 hours. So anyway, I don't know anything about this serial. 1936 B movies about the search for Atlantis. I gotta hunt this down. It sounds great. So that's, those are some movies throughout history that came out around this time. Obviously, there are some new and upcoming kaiju and monster movies as well. I assume you know this because you seem like an aficionado of giant shark movies, but there are two giant shark movies coming up in the near future. Do you know this?
Yeah, I've heard tales of Deep Water and Chum. And was there one in April that just came out too? There seems to be, yeah, a feeding frenzy of shark films these days.
Absolutely. I wasn't aware of the recent one that came out. I only knew about Deep Water and Chum, but I'm intrigued. And I love the title Chum. It's so it's so brilliantly simple.
Yeah.
And Deepwater just looks like, the Meg, like the same thing as the Meg, but with a little spin on it. I don't know. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see how those are. Masters of the Universe is coming out. If you're of my age or slightly younger, you probably grew up with the He-Man cartoon when you were a kid. That movie is probably going to be terrible and is only adjacent to the monster movie universe. But Masters of the Universe could be enjoyably bad. We'll see. As for stuff that's coming up on Camp Kaiju, we're going to have a Kingly June. I don't know if that's a good way to put it, but
Ooh, I like that.
yeah, we'll have to think of a clever title for it. But Vincent, do you want to talk about the next title that you're bringing to the podcast?
We're shifting gears. We're blasting the horns. We're cranking down the windows. We're hitting the road for Maximum Overdrive, a mid 1980s schlock film directed by Stephen King, based on his short story called Trucks, found in the Night Shift collection. So, listeners, you've got 2 weeks. Check it out at your library if you don't have it already and read it. It's a really fun story. It's really violent and brutal. It's a very campy story. And I'm very interested to see how much of both the camp and the violence translate into the on-screen adaptation. I haven't even said what it's about. It's about killer trucks, sentient, driverless trucks that come to life and murder people.
It's such a perfectly cheesy premise, I'm sure there will be a lot of camp in it, I would assume anyway.
Right.
Yeah, I've never seen the movie myself, but I've always wanted to, and I just know the stories about its making and how and not to overplay this aspect of it, but how drugged out of their minds so many people were during the making of that movie. It's got to be so over the top. I can't wait.
Yep, can't wait. And then we're going to continue our Kingly June.
Yes, the next title that I'm bringing to Camp Kaiju is Children of the Corn, also from the mid-80s, 1984 to be exact. Based on a Stephen King story and co-written. The screenplay was co-written by Stephen King himself. Yeah, I've always been interested in this movie, Children of the Corn. I've never seen it myself. Obviously, we both live in the Midwest, in Minnesota. I'm from Wisconsin originally. So I feel like this is a good example of Midwestern horror, and I've always wanted to see it and see if it lives up to that title.
Agreed. And another, we're a movie pod, but we are also bookworms. And the short story, Children of the Corn, is in the same collection of short stories as Trucks. Again, it's called Night Shift. So check it out, really, and read it. The short story for Children of the Corn is less campy. It's a little more rooted in maybe some Midwest horror. It's really creepy. That's a good story.
Cool. I've never read it, so I will have to do so before that episode. I'll get Night Shift and check it out in general. King is kind of hit or miss for me, but when he's on fire, he really works well. Stating the obvious there a little bit. I mean, maybe the most famous horror writer of all time, but yeah, I'll have to check out those stories.
Heck yeah. And one last thing, get ready for Kai June, the Katzen Coffee spot in St. Paul, Minnesota. They are a local cat cafe, but they are also kaiju enthusiasts. And every Saturday night in June, they will be playing a classic Showa-era kaiju movie. June 6th, we've got King Kong vs. Godzilla. The next week, Destroy All Monsters, followed by King Kong Escapes. And on June 27th, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, 1974. There'll be a raffle for a figure for each movie every Saturday, and it sounds like a good time to me. So check out Katzen Coffee in St. Paul. for Kai Jun.
When worlds collide. Written in the stars is a message of doom for this, our world. And now in the most shattering experience the screen has ever given you, Paramount tells what could happen within your lifetime when worlds collide. An astronomer checks and double-checks his horrifying discovery. A distant star racing through space toward an inevitable collision with this planet. The United Nations meet in emergency session. All conflicts pale before this threat from another world.
If you wait until the danger is visible to the naked eye, it will be too late to escape.
High on a mountaintop, an army of scientists work desperately to build this giant rocket, this modern Noah's Ark, to carry a few picked survivors of our doomed civilization to a new life on another world, reaching the heights of self-sacrifice, the depths of the animal lust for survival as they fight to be among the few who can be saved.
Let's take the ship away from them! Come on!
Fighting among themselves, fighting against time, as doomsday is upon them.
I think all you scientists are crackpots.
Nothing is going to happen.
When worlds collide, you'll see the most amazing, awe-inspiring scenes ever put on film. The forces of nature unleashed in all their terrifying force. Tremendous tidal waves smashing New York City. The molten fires from the bowels of the earth gushing out to consume our world.
This is the dangerous way station on the road to the planets. The jumping off place for the fantastic rocket ship built in outer space. Yes, you'll be out of this world through every stirring moment of conquest of space. You'll live the strange, topsy-turvy life of men who live as no other men have lived before.
Evacuate Section 34.
Not tomorrow, not next year, but sometime before the year 2000 AD, this amazing event will take place. And now you will be part of it, rocketing beyond the horizon of our time to join the greatest human adventure of all time. Invaders from Mars. He saw them land from outer space. He saw them capture innocent people only to destroy. Father turned against son. People changed into strange, weird animals. A general of the army becomes a saboteur. Trusted police turned into arsonists. The boy's parents changed into killers.
But nobody's getting anywhere out there. Nobody can locate anything. Anybody. The Martians. We've got to stop them.
Invaders from Mars, capturing humans at will for their own sinister purposes, turning them into diabolical instruments of destruction. Invaders from Mars, weird, fantastic beings of a superintelligence,
ruling a race of synthetic humans and pitting them against mankind's dream to conquer the universe.
Come on, step on it. Search every tunnel. We gotta find Ronaldo and the kid. When the colonel gives a signal, get back here on the double.
But tonight, we are talking about War of the Worlds from 1953, the first film adaptation of the classic H.G. Wells novel. Vincent, what is your history with this film?
Surprisingly, very little. I may have seen it once when I was a kid on TV, but upon this rewatch, it might as well have been a first watch. I didn't remember anything if I had seen it. I will tell you, though, I'm a huge H.G. Wells fan. I read this book in 6th grade, along with The Time Machine, Island of Dr. Moreau, The Invisible Man. Like, I went through his hits even back as far back as 6th grade. I've reread War of the Worlds a couple of times since then. Just like 3 years ago, I reread it. It's a page turner. It's so good. Wells is so good at combining philosophy with action and adventure. And it's just an irresistible combination for any of those books I just mentioned. And what else? I think I saw the 2005 Spielberg War of the Worlds for my birthday when it came out. So nostalgia aside, though, I still think that movie holds up. It's just a classic story that I've always been very familiar with, even if it's not this particular screen adaptation.
Yeah, basically the same thing for me. I did read the novel kind of a long time ago. I think I was in high school when I read it the first time. I tried to reread it in anticipation of this recording. I wasn't able to finish the whole thing, but brought back some good memories, obviously. Of course, I've seen the Spielberg version, which I think is very strong, like you just said, Vincent. There's also the Orson Welles radio broadcast from 1938, which I did re-listen to today, and that holds up. That's so clever. And like some of the stuff where like, you know, you're hearing a news report on the radio, and the guy is talking about like there's a strange creature emerging from the ground, and imagining somebody listening to the radio in 1938 and hearing that, you can understand how it might have like caused a stir and like raised kind of a panic at the time, you know?
What's so effective about that, and it's Orson Welles, and this was before he was in the movies. He was already a creative legend. He'd already made a name for himself on radio and on stage. And when I listen to his War of the Worlds, you're right. It's like a false start. You feel like you're listening to a live broadcast, and then it's like breaking news. The modern equivalent would be breaking news. Something's happened in the cornfield, and you're right. The journalist goes out there. Then bombs start flying, like people start screaming, and the broadcast, the quote unquote broadcast, cuts out. And you have dead air, which is like the cardinal sin to avoid on radio. But Wells uses dead air to convey, oh, that journalist just got nuked or something. Like there's no one on air right now for a reason.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's so effective. And like shortly thereafter, we're another kind of like authoritative radio voice is like, the unthinkable seems to be happening, like impending Martian invasion. Like just, I don't know, to hear that on the radio in 38, to imagine what that would have been like. Yeah, it must have been so powerful, and still is in a lot of ways. It's a really creative, effective piece of playing with the art form, you know?
Right. Audio dramas. I nerd out about those on Patreon sometimes if listeners are interested in signing up. There's my little plug for Patreon.
Perfect. I knew we were going to get that in there somehow. But yeah, like, you know, that's kind of a long roundabout way of saying that even though I knew about all that other War of the Worlds stuff, I had never seen the 1953 version until yesterday. I finally saw it yesterday. And I watched When Worlds Collide yesterday too. We'll probably talk about that movie a little bit more coming up here soon. So yeah, pretty much a first encounter with this movie. Lots to say about it.
Close encounter.
Yes, yeah, indeed. Close encounter of the Martian kind. So let's dive in. Let's talk about the crew a little bit. Normally we start with the director, but in this case, I feel like it makes a little more sense to start with the producer, George Pal. I feel like you're a fan of George Pal. Am I right about that?
I don't know, actually. I don't know, but I respect the hell out of him. So George Pal was a Hungarian who made films in his home country. He made films in Germany and France and England and Czechoslovakia in the 1920s and 30s. He then emigrated to the US in 1939 and began working for Paramount. He was an animator and a puppeteer who was nominated for several Oscars in the 40s for Puppetoons, I believe is the term for his brand of animation. And it was like a series of animated shorts that he was known for, really well known for. He climbed his way up the ladder at Paramount, and in the 50s, he started producing science fiction and fantasy films, his other, I think, legacy. So we have When Worlds Collide, great title, from 1951. He produced The Time Machine, a Wells adaptation in 1960, which he also directed. And I believe he produced Destination Moon from 1950-51.
Yes, I believe you're right about that, yeah.
Okay. Just real quick about Destination Moon. If it wasn't the first, it was like the first really widely seen feature film to depict human space travel. So in 1950, what we think of as science fiction and what we take for granted was still very, very new. And by science fiction, I mean like 50s cinema science fiction with the aliens and the flying saucers. I mean, you just know the 50s is synonymous with that genre. But it starts with Destination Moon. It's kind of a rickety piece with its special effects, but it was hugely influential. And George Pal just rode that momentum onto the next thing, I think culminating with War of the Worlds here.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, this was a huge production for Paramount, relatively big budget, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So George Pal was gaining a lot of power in the studio, and his previous sci-fi movies, did very well and already kind of made a name for himself. Conquest of Space is another movie that he produced, a sci-fi movie from 1955. So yeah, he produced a lot of sci-fi movies throughout the 50s, but like you said, Vincent, this is certainly one of the highlights. The director of this film, War of the Worlds, is Byron Haskin. He was actually a frequent collaborator with producer George Pal, for example, Conquest of Space, which I just talked about. After fighting in World War I, Haskin became a cameraman's apprentice and then a cinematographer and special effects artist for Warner Brothers, earning several Oscar nominations. In 1938, Haskin and the Warner Brothers Special Effects Department were awarded an Oscar for technical achievement for developing a rear projection system for special effects cinematography. So probably not surprising given how amazing War of the Worlds looks and how impressive its special effects are. Its director, Byron Haskin, basically started out in that department. He became a director in the late 1940s, starting off in film noir and later specializing in sci-fi and fantasy.
Albert Nozaki designed the Martian spaceships. So yes, let's definitely talk about him in a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk about him. We'll also talk about Chesley Bonestell, one of my favorite names in film history, who did a lot of the art, like the solar system and the space and the planetary art for this movie, and for Destination Moon, and for When Worlds Collide. So we'll talk about Chesley Bonestell a little bit as well, which will just always sound like a made-up pseudonym to me. I love it.
I also just want to cut in and say I love 50s science fiction. Regardless of how I feel about this particular film by the end, this is one of my fortes, I suppose, my specialties in monster movie cinema history. I just love what the 50s did in that decade.
Yes, some of the all-time classics of Hollywood cinema for sure. And you were talking about this a little bit with H.G. Wells, but just the ability to combine like genre entertainment with social commentary. In some cases, maybe not necessarily with this film, but like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Day the Earth Stood Still, and movies like that. So impressive. So I wouldn't say it's my forte, but I share that interest, absolutely.
Definitely.
We did already talk about H.G. Wells a little bit, so we don't have to spend too much more time on him right now. I'm sure we'll talk about him more later. I did want to talk a little bit about the special effects director for War of the Worlds, Gordon Jennings. He also started off as a camera assistant during the silent era. He went on to design the visual and special effects of more than 180 films, receiving 7 Oscars throughout his career. He technically won twice for When Worlds Collide from 1952. He won twice for the same movie, receiving the Best Visual Effects Oscar and also a special award for technical achievement. Sadly, Gordon Jennings died of a heart attack before War of the Worlds was released. He did win the Oscar for this movie as well, so he received a Special Achievement Academy Award for this film posthumously after he died.
7 Oscars. I mean, he's not the only such awarded talent on this film. So behind the camera, certainly this film is stacked.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, just to finish it off real quick, even the cinematographer, George Barnes, he was active from the silent era. He was nominated for 8 Oscars and he won for Rebecca, the Alfred Hitchcock movie. War of the Worlds was Barnes' second last film. And then we have music by Laith Stevens, who started off in radio, speaking of radio. He worked for CBS Radio throughout the 30s, served as radio director for the Office of War Information during World War II. His numerous film scores include Destination Moon, When Worlds Collide. So we're kind of, it's sort of a small family with some of these sci-fi movies at this time, a lot of collaborative artists. So yeah, like you were saying, Vincent, just the crew of this movie, very well regarded, Hollywood A-list for sure.
You saying what a small group it is, I think that's also important just for context here. 1953 is still very early in that cycle of 50s sci-fi cinema. You're talking about Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and what was the other one you mentioned?
The Day the Earth Stood Still. Yeah.
Well, Body Snatchers is 56, 57, full swing. Like, we've already seen A pictures, B movies, Z movies come and go. But by 53, you had Destination Moon, you can count them on one hand, The Day the Earth Stood Still, The Thing from Another World, and then in 53 you get this War of the Worlds. Invaders from Mars comes in 53, but that's still kind of a low on the radar. It's not like a big blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
One hand, those are the ones you're working with. Then in 54 you get Them, which kicks off the big bug movement. You get Godzilla. You get Creature from the Black Lagoon. So 53, it's still very early in the cycle.
That's a good point. And do you think, like, we'll talk about the reception of this movie a little bit later on, but do you think War of the Worlds helped to kind of like speed that along a little bit, that craze with sci-fi movies?
I would have to think so. I mean, this movie is a blockbuster, and it did very well on all fronts. So, I mean, they're not the classic flying saucers that would come to define the genre, but I think you still see that element of UFOs and the ever-present allegory of communism, which would also come to define the genre.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think also just like the production values, like this was, again, a pretty big budget movie, but I think its success told producers, like, if you invest the money in a movie like this, it'll be worth it. Audiences will want to see it. So I think it, probably elevated the esteem of sci-fi movies too, like from kind of cheesy B movies to like Hollywood elite in a way,
Yeah, definitely.
I think you could go so far as to say that the crew is maybe a little bit more accomplished than the cast in this movie,
A little more decorated.
Yes, definitely decorated. That's a good word for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No disrespect to the actors in the movie. We'll just talk about the leads, the male and female lead. We have Gene Barry as Dr. Clayton Forrester. He started off on Broadway in 1942, then shifted to television in 1950. Started off in film shortly thereafter, so this was pretty early in his film career. His first movie role was as Dr. Frank Addison in The Atomic City from 1952, so just a year before this movie. He doesn't have much to do. I think you could say that about many of the cast members. Like, he's kind of a, square-jawed, like, scientist, nuclear physicist, I think he's supposed to be, he's like your stock sci-fi hero from this period of Hollywood filmmaking.
But they try to make him a nerd as well. He's always wearing glasses. He's this professor, in contrast to maybe a more military type hero. A lot of colonels show up later in later films, but he certainly looks like Superman. He looks like Clark Kent, right?
You're
Miscast maybe, but he's harmless ultimately, I think.
Yeah, when he's first introduced, he seems very smug. Like we'll talk about the female lead in a second, and she's like talking about him, not knowing that he's like the character that she's talking about. She's like, "Oh, this dreamy nuclear scientist. I'm so in love with his work." And this like smug scientist is like, "Oh yeah, that's me. No big deal." And like at first, you're like, "Who is this guy?" Like he's such a prick, you know. But like he does kind of grow on you a little bit throughout the movie.
Yeah. More to say.
Yeah.
Anne Robinson plays our female lead, Sylvia Van Buren. Van Buren is a library science instructor. Is she a professor or a teacher?
I got the sense that she recently graduated from college and worked in a library. That was my understanding.
Okay. It was my understanding that she was a teacher, but maybe like at the university level.
Okay.
I've read different sources. I could be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, they don't do a great job of conveying that, really.
Well, that's also a critique. Like, we don't really it really doesn't matter. She introduces herself along with her profession, and then she's immediately serving coffee to the men. So, we don't really know.
Yeah. No, indeed. I'm sure we'll talk about this later on in the episode too, but I feel like many of the women characters in American sci-fi movies of the 50s are like on a range from like surprisingly in the context of the story, they have agency, they're scientists, they know what they're doing, they're very strong characters. That's on one end of the spectrum, and I think it's relatively rare at this time. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have, kind of, yeah, like, I don't know. They're meant to be caretakers. They're easily frightened. They're hysterical. And I think, unfortunately, Sylvia in this movie is more towards that latter end of the spectrum,
Yes. Unfortunately, another hallmark of science fiction movies at this time, the obligatory female scientist, but she has nothing to contribute scientifically.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about When Worlds Collide, and I think that's actually an example of closer to the other end of the spectrum where Joyce, I think is her name, she is like scientist assistant, but she's like running the machinery. She knows what she's doing. She knows astronomy. That movie is about like a space mission to get off of the Earth when it's endangered, when like it's gonna, like civilization is gonna end, and she's like one of the 20 scientists who are gonna be on this spaceship to like flee Earth and start a new civilization. And you're like, yeah, I buy that, like she is needed for this mission. She knows what she's doing, and like, so I don't know. It's just like a telling contrast between Joyce in that movie and Sylvia in this movie, unfortunately.
Yes. One quick thing about Anne Robinson and Gene Barry, our two leads. They had cameos in Spielberg's War of the Worlds in 2005. I didn't even know that. So now I got to rewatch that one to my utter delight. And the DVD I have of War of the Worlds, 53, has 2 audio commentary tracks. One with Gene Barry and Anne Robinson.
Whoa.
Which I can't wait to watch and listen to. And then the other commentary track, it has Joe Dante on it and other, top luminaries. And so I'm thinking I have to watch the War of the Worlds at least 2 more times because I got to listen to both of those tracks.
Yeah. Amazing. I feel like I have to buy that DVD now. Is it Joe Dante and Spielberg on the same commentary track?
No.
Okay. That would be incredible.
Spielberg's not involved.
Yeah. That's too bad. I mean, yeah, his version's really good. I like the Spielberg version of this a lot. And I'm sure we'll talk about that more later too. But, it's not perfect, of course, but maybe a more faithful adaptation of the book, possibly.
Yeah.
In some ways.
In some ways. It's a more human. I think it really nails the human on the ground point of view much clearer than George Powell's War of the Worlds, which still anchored ostensibly by Gene Barry and Anne Robinson. But the script, it doesn't really give them much to do. With Tom Cruise, he has a son he's trying to reunite with. So I feel like the stakes are just personally much stronger.
Yeah, well said, for sure. And maybe that element is closer to the book, because that's like about a writer who's trying to reunite with his wife, right? Who goes missing in England or something like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But again, sorry, I'm getting off track. We're talking about the 53 version, not that version. So yeah, let's talk about the production backstory a little bit. Speaking of adapting Wells' novel, a film adaptation of the book had been planned for many years. Paramount first bought the rights in 1925, with plans for Cecil B. DeMille to direct the film. However, after that project fell through, the studio again planned to make it in the 1930s, with Sergei Eisenstein directing. This is when Eisenstein, the great Soviet silent-era filmmaker who made Battleship Potemkin and Strike and many other classic movies, he was under contract with Paramount for a while in the 1930s, and he never actually made a film for them, but your mind is just blown by what that could have been like, you know?
Wow, like a 4-hour epic of editing masterpiece, I guess.
Yeah, like radical montage editing in the context of War of the Worlds. I wish that movie existed. That would be so cool. Sadly, it does not exist. That never actually happened. Meanwhile, across the pond in England, you have Alfred Hitchcock, as well as producer Alexander Korda, wanting to make War of the Worlds into a film as well. They wanted to direct or produce an adaptation, but neither of those moved forward as well. So this, conceived adaptation is just lying dormant for many, many years. There is, however, finally traction when Paramount assigned producer George Pal the project in July 1951, so this is several decades later. Pal initially intended on a more faithful adaptation of the novel, again in which a scientist searches for his wife after civilization is destroyed, but Paramount production head Don Hartman insisted on the romantic subplot between Gene Barry and Anne Robinson. So that was kind of a result of the producer coming in and saying, you need this emotional sort of subplot. The screenwriter, Barry Lyndon, I think it's funny how close that name is to Barry Lyndon, hated this subplot and found it so unconvincing, but he wrote it into the story nonetheless.
It's unconvincing because it's not written. It doesn't seem committed to. That's the word. And if the screenwriter, as you have just laid out, was unconvinced himself, I think that translates into the finished product.
Yeah, totally. Like, it seems very obvious that everybody knew, like, this is a sci-fi movie that's all about the special effects. It's all about the Martians, the destruction, all that stuff. They didn't really care about anything else, So George Pal had planned for the last third of the film to be presented in 3D. His idea was that the audience would put on their 3D glasses at the same moment that Dr. Forrester and the other characters put on their goggles to protect themselves from the atomic blast, which would have been such a cool idea. Like, that's such a fun idea, but it would have been very expensive. Obviously, shooting in 3D just adds so many complications and so much money to the production, so that did not happen, but it would have been very cool.
If I may add some more historical context, 1953 was early days, but big time for the first ever 3D craze in movies. Another now classic science fiction film, It Came from Outer Space, was released in 1953 as a 3D film. So, yeah, I'm glad War of the Worlds is not a 3D film, and that because they were able to put their budget obviously towards other things, but it was in the water. 3D, it was the big thing.
Yeah, and I like some of the Hollywood movies that are like shown in 3D but weren't meant to be seen that way don't really look very good, but when it's intentional and when the directors are like trying to make it as astounding as possible in that process, I really love the technology, and I kind of wish more movies still did it. Like, there was a little bit of a craze in the early 2010s for 3D. So like you, I'm glad they didn't do that, but I don't know, to picture some of those like the green rays and everything like at the end of the movie in 3D would have been amazing to see.
Without, if they could do it without sacrificing any of the production elements and quality that we get in the finished picture, oh my God, amazing, incredible to have that the heat ray come at you in 3D.
Oh my God.
Too much.
Yeah. Even better than Friday the 13th 3D, if you can believe it.
No, I can't.
Impossible.
Well, location shooting for The War of the Worlds took place in Corona, California, just outside of Los Angeles. This was a change from the novel setting in England, a cost-saving measure, which I think works fine. I don't think the story is inherently needed to be in the English countryside. But live action work with the cast took 40 days of shooting. And they were also in Arizona, I'll add. More than 6 months of special effects work, plus an additional 2 months for optical effects, were needed after the regular shooting schedule with the cast. We had animated color paintings of the solar system in this movie, and they were created by Chesley Bonestell. I got a chance to say that name now. And his artwork was accompanied by an opening narration by Sir Cedric Hardwicke, which we didn't mention earlier. Monster Movie Connection, Hardwicke played Dr. Frankenstein in The Ghost of Frankenstein, the fourth entry in that series.
Nice. I recognized that name. I didn't know why. That might not be the connection I was thinking of. But...
No, he's also a main player in Rope.
Oh, that could be it. Yeah.
That's probably it for you.
Yeah. I do love that early scene, though, where there's the narration by Hardwicke, and he's talking about the different planets of the solar system and why the Martians are like not able to go to those planets. And then we have this beautiful artwork by Chesley Bonestell of like, you know, the different planets and like ice caves and mountains and volcanoes and everything. It's stunningly beautiful. I love that opening.
This movie is an 85-minute runtime, and I swear it's like 10 minutes of opening. That is just so beautiful. It's such a dreamscape. And I wouldn't change it for the world. I was like, this is just artwork. I'm just being treated to some beautiful art of the galaxy here.
Yeah, courtesy of Chesley Bonestell.
Chesley Bonestell. Take a drink every time.
Man.
So more about Bonestell. He was a painter and illustrator who specialized in space exploration. His work appeared in magazines and books from the 40s to the 70s. According to one space policy expert, quote, through Bonestell's visual images, he stimulated the interest of a generation of Americans and showed how space travel would be accomplished. Love that. He, Bonestell, contributed artwork and advice to other PAL productions, Destination Moon, When Worlds Collide, and Conquest of Space. And there's a really great image here that's going to be my new, screen image on my desktop from Bonestell. I'll share it with you all. A link in the show notes. Just a dreamscape moon world. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, this painting is called Saturn as Seen from Titan, and I think that was from the 40s. And, you can kind of see how it contributed to like the public imagination of just the mystique of outer space,
Yeah, there's like a pulp fiction, like magazine cover vibe to it from that time.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Nice. Well, The War of the Worlds was shot for $2 million, and $1.4 million of it went towards those special effects. Although for practical purposes, the Martians from the novel, which are round, bear-sized creatures whose bodies appear to be only heads and beaks with wriggling tentacles, are simplified to the short creatures we see in the film. Also important to know that the tripods, as depicted in Wells' novel and every other adaptation, the spacecraft are not in this film depicted with 3 legs. Instead, they're more of a flying saucer type deal. I read that the guy we're going to talk about next, Albert Nozaki, did design those Martian war machines with electronic legs, but there was so much voltage involved, they had to scrap that idea for safety because people were just going to get electrocuted if they went through with massive electrified machinery.
Yeah, that's a crazy story. This long quote from George Pal a little bit later in the show notes here is basically all about that. So we can include a link to that article where Pal says this in the show notes maybe as well. But yeah, he's basically saying like we wanted to discharge 1 million volts like from these war machines on a soundstage. And then he's like, this is a terrible idea. Like we could have set the whole thing on fire and probably would have killed somebody. So obviously we couldn't do that.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, they were committed to this thing.
Yeah.
But Albert Nozaki, a Japanese-American art director, he designed special effects for some other pictures known as The Ten Commandments from 1956, Robinson Crusoe on Mars, When Worlds Collide Again. But the War Machine props were designed to achieve a manta ray shape, which you totally see. The tentacle, the probe that comes out of the spacecraft was designed by Nozaki to resemble a cobra, which you can also see in the shape of that. So very thoughtful designs here.
Yeah, very effective, very menacing, especially in that scene where Clayton and Sylvia, can't remember their character names because I care so little about them, but they're hiding in that house, and like the war machine with its like neck, its very snake-like neck, is like slowly, kind of stealthily going through the house, which is a really effective scene in the Spielberg version too. But it's great in this movie. It is very suspenseful, and I think the creature designs are a big reason why.
Yeah. I just want to read a little bit more about Nozaki because I don't know. I mean, how many Japanese films do we make? And he himself was not Japanese. Well, he was born in Japan, but he and his family moved to the United States when he was 3, and they settled in Los Angeles. He and his family, yeah, okay, I'm not surprised. They were rounded up and sent to an internment camp in California during World War II. Sadly, not surprised by that. But after the war, he got involved at Paramount Pictures, the movies we just mentioned. He was nominated for his art direction on The Ten Commandments, and he ultimately retired in 1969 due to a degenerative disease which cost him his sight. But I think he has a heck of a legacy here.
Yeah. I mean, the design of those war machines is really incredible. I think that's like the lasting image from War of the Worlds. There's more than one, but like what I knew about this movie before watching it was like the image of those floating spaceships with their like green rays, you know? And so much of that, maybe all of that, or most of that, has to do with Nozaki.
But we have some other people involved in the designs of other elements of this film. The Martians themselves, the Martian creatures, were designed by sculptor and makeup artist Charles Gamora, who coincidentally was the man in the gorilla suit. I knew it. I knew that name was familiar. Gorilla movie nerd here. Charles Gamora he played a bunch of gorillas in 30s and 40s and even 50s films. But Gamora built the Martians in this film out of paper mache and sheet rubber, and the arms were pulsating thanks to the use of rubber tubing. Now, the fiery blast of the war machine's heat rays were achieved by welding wire and a blower that directed the sparks toward the camera. This optical effect was then superimposed onto scenes where the war machines attack humans and buildings. The green ray, or skeleton beam, fired by the war machines were created through the use of matte paintings, like the disintegration of Colonel Hefner, for example, consisted of 144 matte paintings combined together. Wow. This is the same with the almost invisible force fields that protect the machines from the military's attacks. What a great twist in this movie when you see the invisible force fields. So sci-fi. Just come to life so well. These images were created with matte paintings on clear glass, which were then photographed and combined with other effects, all optically printed together during post-production. Who needs CGI? Come on.
Exactly.
Man. Now, we do have some real footage in the film, real-life situations, some stock footage from World War II newsreels for some of the military attack scenes, even footage of a real-life car crash, traffic jams. But you know what? I could tell it was stock footage from the maybe Paramount's library. Mm-hmm. It was still shot so well. I was like, this fits. It doesn't feel disjointed in a way.
No, I would agree. A lot of that is like superimposed over other footage too, like in the montage where like other countries throughout the world are like trying to figure out what's going on, and they're like scrambling, like all these military and government men are like meeting in rooms to figure out the best course of action, and like some stock footage is like superimposed over that, but it all works so well. There's just so much visual energy and imagination to this movie. And yeah, so you don't even notice the stock footage because it's just all is combined so well.
Visual energy. I love that term. Different sound effects were used in this film. Different sound effects associated with the Martians and their war machines were created by manipulating electric guitars and tape recorders, even dragging a microphone along dry ice. So experimental to me. Laith Stevens' musical score consists of only two instruments, a Nova chord, which is an early example of a synthesizer, and a vibraphone. I didn't know we were turning into that kind of show tonight. No, sorry. What
are you thinking of?
I'm thinking of a vibraphone, a mallet percussion instrument similar to a xylophone.
Yep. Indeed.
Yeah.
The music, I think the music's really strong in this movie. I think it's very like atmospheric, frightening at times. There's a lot more that we could say about the special effects. I have a link at the end of the Google Doc that we could put in the show notes that goes into a lot more detail about it, because really it's incredible the amount of care and just like time and money and energy they put into it. It's so ingenious.
Definitely. There's so much.
Yeah.
But on we move.
Indeed, to the premiere of the film in Hollywood on February 20th, 1953. The film itself actually didn't go into wide release until later in 1953, but when it did, it was a critical and box office success, making about $4 million at the US and Canadian box office, so that doubled its budget already. Somewhat surprisingly, if you view it through modern eyes, it was rated X by the British Board of Film Classification. They thought it was too violent, too horrifying. That rating meant that no one under the age of 16 could see the film. Even when Paramount tried to have the film reevaluated in Britain in 1961, the request was rejected, and it was still rated X 8 years later. So, you watch it today and you're like, oh, the effects are cool, but it's not really all that scary or frightening. But at the time, especially according to some of the reviews that came out, it really terrified people.
Men are literally turned to ash on screen. Objectively speaking, it's still horrifying. But
yeah.
It's not X-rated worthy, right? Some more film history here. I just got to give you listeners some context with the British censors and their aversion to horror. I mean, this goes back to the 30s when in the United States you had a huge cycle of horror films from Universal and other studios. Those movies weren't shipped to Britain without heavy edits. And I'm blanking on, there's one film from the 30s or 40s that Britain said, we're done importing Hollywood horror films. We're done. And it kind of killed the horror cycle in the 30s. So even in the States, horror kind of went underground for a little bit. But you're thinking, well, what about Hammer films? They were making movies in the 50s. Yes, much to the consternation of their own censors. So much so that when Hammer releases The Quatermass Experiment, the title of that film, The Experiment, is a giant X. It's spelled experiment, as a slight tongue-in-cheek diss at the censors. I don't think they got a rating for that movie. They just released it anyways with an X on the cover.
I love that. That's so clever. Wow. The history of like filmmakers and distributors like trying to find ways to get around censors is fascinating. I love that history because those movies make money. Audiences want to see shocking, titillating stuff,
Yeah, and maybe it's a little tamer by today's standards. But I'm thinking, here we are in the 50s, and now we can talk about War of the Worlds too. We have a generation who has literally fought through hell and back during World War II. We're in the atomic age. Like, the fear of atomic annihilation was scary. So what could you see on screen that's honestly as scary as any of that stuff?
Yeah, it's a good point. And in War of the Worlds, that starts with like a really fast montage of World Wars I and II, and the narrator is like, the world experienced such terrible horrors in the World Wars, but it never knew anything like the War of the Worlds, like something kind of ridiculous like that. But it starts off with that, like, we have been through these wars, but it's about to get worse. And that kind of seems like a fitting way to start the movie.
It totally grounds it in a sensibility. This isn't going to be all fun and games. This movie is a war, and it's to be, I don't know, let's remember what happened 10 years ago when we were in a war.
And, it's just interesting to look forward a little bit, too, because in the late 50s and in the 1960s, you see censorship loosening up a bit. You see horror really becoming all the rage in the 1960s and kind of getting back to that, like, early 30s kind of like high point, And I think already in the early 50s, you see it kind of leading up to that a little bit, It would take a while. But I think, because of the reasons you were saying, audiences were not naive. They knew that the world is violent and shocking, terrible things happen. So I think even a movie like this is kind of looking forward to that a little bit.
I think that's a valid interpretation and reading of your history. I think because the counterculture was right around the corner.
Yeah, yep. And despite the controversy around censorship in Britain, this movie was very well received by critics as well. The New York Times said it was imaginatively conceived, makes excellent use of Technicolor. Variety said that it is as fearsome as a film as was the Orson Welles 1938 radio interpretation. And the Monthly Film Bulletin, which is actually based in Britain, called it the best of the post-war American science fiction films. The Martian machines have a quality of real terror. Their sinister apparitions, prowlings, and pulverizings are spectacularly well done. I love that quote. Before talking a little bit more about some of the themes and maybe some of the criticisms of the movie, which I'm sure we have, it is time for our sponsor break. Camp Kaiju is brought to you by Zach Linder and the Zach Pack, powered by Coldwell Banker Realty. Whether you're looking for your dream home, a savvy investment property, or expert guidance in home rehab and flipping, the Zach Pack has you covered. Check the link in the show notes for more information.
We have a comment from our patron, Jim Chaney. And for you listening out there, if you want to join Patreon, one little perk is that you get to chime in with some comments about the featured episode before we record. So thank you, Jim, for taking us up on that. And here's his note regarding War of the Worlds. He says, I personally love this movie. It's easily in my top 10. It relies heavily on action and visual effects with stunning colors and shapes. While I prefer the tripods from the book in the 2005 film, these were still impressive, as with all the special effects. I did feel the characters were somewhat forgettable and the third act felt a bit rushed, but the direction was excellent. It effectively captures the scale of the alien threat compared to humanity. If it weren't for a simple cold, we would have been obliterated. It's scary to think what might have happened if the Martians had learned to gargle. Overall, it might not hit the mark if you're looking for a perfectly faithful adaptation, but it stands as a great piece of 1950s sci-fi cinema. I actually have a copy of the original H.G. Wells broadcast on vinyl and plan on playing it tonight. Stay campy.
Thanks, Jim. I can't disagree with any of that review.
No, I want to listen to the radio story on vinyl.
Yeah.
That's a good night in.
Yeah. Oh, man. When it was storming last night here in Minnesota, thunder and lightning going, that would have been great.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Jim, for chiming in. Thank you all for your comments. We'll get to them all at some point. New listeners, old listeners, you're all a part of this. So we appreciate your voice in this. Well, Peter Lorre, he is here somewhere. He's going to talk about a Poverty Row picture called The Valley of the Zombies, about a woman who falls under the hypnotic spell of a resurrected madman. Ooh. Blood madness out of the fog into your heart.
That sounds like the beginning of like an 80s hair metal band song, I would listen to that.
It has a average 3-star rating on Letterboxd, so hey, I have high hopes.
Yeah. Well, for Peter's sake, I hope it is tolerable, at least.
Indeed.
Welcome to the Poverty Row Studios, yes, on the other side of Hollywood, where the stars were dimmer and the red carpets dripped with blood. Together we will watch the best of the worst. Movies known for their limited budgets, outlandish concepts, and questionable performances, but with enough haunted houses, zombies, ape men, and devil bats to keep you up at night. This is the Poverty Row Picture Show, and I dare you to sleep through these nightmares. finally, the floor is mine. Yes, to Matthew and Vincent really believed they could summon me like that without consequence. They took me from my packing. Yes, listeners, I am packing my bags for a trip to the stars. I believe it is the only way I am able to find a cure for Lenore. Yes, Lenore, my beautiful wife, who has been inexplicably transformed into a raven. Now, do not get me wrong, she is still as ravenishing as ever, but you know, she did not ask for this development in her life, and I, as her BC knight in celluloid armor, I am determined to find a cure and turn her back into a woman once and for all. But yes, do you hear, listeners? That message. Oh, how it beckons me, how it beguiles me, and yet I am convinced its source lies beyond our world, and by Zuko's beard I will find it. Anyways, while I am here now, I must uphold my sacred duty to review B movies from the Poverty Row. And what do you know? This week's picture, Valley of the Zombies, is from that Studio Republic. Now, this movie, Valley of the Zombies, is not as bad a trip as some other Poverty Row flicks, but leave it to the Poverty Row to bandy about the word zombie without the care in the world to its authenticity. Now, this movie gives us a vampire instead. Do they even know what they are doing? Nevertheless, despite the misnomer, our vampire is played with hammy delight by Ian Keith. Now, I remember Ian, he was a nice man and a good actor. Mr. Keith was up for the role of Dracula himself in 1931, and again in 1948's Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Well, Ian never got to play the Count, but in Valley of the Zombies, he makes it count. He gets to drink plenty of blood, and straight from the necks of those who've wronged him. Along the way, there are a couple of would-be gumshoes who provide a rat-tat-tat of wisecracks. Oh, they are not all good jokes, but they are relentless enough that you never get bored. Now, if you'll excuse me, I really must get back to my packing before next week's all about those dead-end kids in Spookbusters. Ooh. Wait. What is this? This little squeaking sound coming through the cosmic message. No, listeners, I do not like the sound of that little rat. Tat, 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 tat. No.
Such stories as H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds and Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea have challenged mankind. So today, man is successfully probing deep into the mysteries of the universe. Can he penetrate the greatest mystery of all, time itself? It took the creative magic of George Pal and the fabulous production know-how of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer to catapult you through time into a world that is yet to be.
Why is it that we usually ignore the fourth dimension? You see, we can move in the other three. As the doctor said, up, down, forwards, backwards, sideways. But when it comes to time, we are prisoners.
Inventor Rod Taylor's breakthrough into the realm of the fourth dimension is defied by his friend Alan Young.
If that machine can do what you say it can, destroy it, George, before it destroys you.
Every moment is a year, hurtling through the atomic wars of the future on an incredible excursion into the unknown. What are the people like? Ah, the shape of things to come. It's lovely Yvette Mimieux. And what happens when boy meets girl thousands of years hence?
How do they wear their hair?
Who?
The women of your time.
Up like that?
Show me.
Is this the human race of the future? Or is this the Morlocks, fiendish creatures who live in a weird underground world? And the Eloi, the tranquil sunshine people, who the Morlocks dominate and maintain like cattle, luring them below with the hypnotic wail of the sirens. To feed upon them in cannibalistic horror.
What are the themes in this movie? I think there are some themes, even though it kind of seems like just a sci-fi potboiler. And I think it's especially kind of interesting in relation to H.G. Wells' book.
Oh my gosh. Well, I would love to talk about the book. Yes, H.G. Wells, anti-colonial. He was a socialist. He was a pacifist. I mean, he wrote this book in 1898. It's like peak British Empire. It is after the scramble for Africa, where European empires literally sat in a room and carved up a map of Africa and said, all right, Britain, you take that part. France, you take that part. So it is not his War of the Worlds is not a subtle critique of an advancing military, otherworldly entity invading a foreign shore and completely decimating them. I was reading the foreword to my copy of War of the Worlds, the introduction, and it just draws some great parallels to like the people of Africa, East Asia, the idea of disease, how that worked so well in defending these continents from European invasion for so long. So in Africa, for example, I mean, Africa wasn't conquered by the Europeans until about the turn of the 20th century, because malaria was incurable because of all these diseases. Europeans just said, nah, we're good, much like the Martians do at the end of the story. So the parallels are there that I find very interesting from a cultural, historical standpoint.
That reminds me, I just read a book called Indigenous Continent, which basically says the same thing about the attempts to colonize, the Americas, and how, for centuries, European colonists were unsuccessful because they were ravaged by disease. So that's just kind of proving the point that you just made there. And I think it also, like sometimes when like with the Spielberg version, for example, and even this version from 53, the ending maybe seems kind of unsatisfying. Like, oh, the aliens just die because they catch a cold because of bacteria. That's it. But like, I feel like that parallel to like the history of colonialism actually puts it in a really fascinating light.
Absolutely. I don't remember. We'll talk about the religion of this movie, but and compared to Spielberg's, I don't remember the religious component being there, if at all. Still certainly the same ending. And I remember Morgan Freeman's voice. He narrates that film, and he talks about the irony of the smallest beings on Earth, the bacteria, and bringing down the Martians. Mm-hmm. And to me, that theme of just like cultural or evolutionary fate, what have you, played a hand. But in the 1953 version, that theme is very, very entwined with religion and Christianity, and particular, it's a miracle. It's a providential, divine miracle that sickness of all things brought down the Martians. How do you feel about how that is interpreted in 53's War of the Worlds?
I don't like it. In a nutshell, the religious overtones I find very out of place in this movie, and I think that's another thing that runs counter to H.G. Wells' original novel, because in some ways, that is kind of a satire of religion. You have this curate character, like kind of like a parish priest almost in the book, who is subject of critique. He's kind of cowardly. He is looking out for himself. He tries to steal the food from the main character at one point. And there's a really good quote, if you don't mind me reading from H.G. Wells' novel a little bit. A character says, quote, "Now, whenever things are so that a lot of people feel they ought to be doing something, the weak, and those who go weak with a lot of complicated thinking, always make for a sort of do-nothing religion, very pious and superior, and submit to persecution and the will of the Lord. These cages," and he's referring to the cages in which human captives of the Martians will find themselves, so these cages with human beings, "these cages will be full of psalms and hymns and piety." And this character in the book is saying in kind of a critical way where it's like, when things get really bad, people turn to a very easy kind of religion, a false religion, to like make themselves seem superior to like avoid godly persecution. And I feel like this movie does that, where it's like, as long as you pray and as long as you believe in God, you'll be okay. And that is what happens at the end of this movie, where it's not like it is the bacteria, but like the bacteria were put there by God. Like that basically is a line of dialogue at the end of this movie. So I don't like the religious elements of this movie in particular. In general, I'm kind of like resistant to that sort of, I think it's an easy crutch to be like, oh, just believe and everything will be okay. And this movie is an example of that. And maybe even worse, I think it's kind of like antithetical to what H.G. Wells was trying to say, in part, in his original book,
There's so much to unpack here. And I've actually been thinking all day, like how to approach this topic. I was surprised by the overt Christian religious nature of this movie. But I don't say that, like, see, this is where it's complicated because, like, oh, it's like a Christian film. Like, I don't care about that. I care about how it's woven into the story, how it supports the decisions of the characters, how it supports the themes of like how is it executed.
Yeah.
And I don't like how it's executed because I find it rather preachy, no pun intended, compared to something a little more sophisticated like The Night of the Hunter, which is an extremely Christian movie. And yet that movie's Christian themes moved me to tears.
Yeah.
Where then when I watch War of the Worlds, it's just beating me with religious imagery, with the symbolism. And I'm like, I get it. Okay. I get it. You're not convincing me of anything.
Yeah. It's a good point. And I think bringing up Night of the Hunter is a very revealing contrast. Now I'm thinking of The Addiction, weirdly enough. I did not expect to talk about The Addiction on a podcast about War of the Worlds, but that's a very Catholic movie. And I'm not a Catholic, but I'm still very moved by those themes in that movie. So yeah, make like a religious movie. That's not a criticism in and of itself, but yeah, the way War of the Worlds goes about it does feel very fake, kind of very artificial. And there's another line of dialogue where somebody says it will take the Martians 6 days to destroy the world. And then another character says, oh, the same amount of time it took to create it, meaning like the biblical God created the world in 6 days, And that's like, Wells was like, he believed in evolution and Darwinism, and that's just like totally antithetical to that.
Right. So it's a choice to deviate from the source material thematically. Where I'm going to land is that it is a choice. As overt as it is, I'm going to recognize it as a strong choice. And I'm going to say it's not my cup of tea thematically.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Perhaps some people will be moved by that element in this movie, and that's understandable. But yeah, it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't have to like repeat everything from the Wells novel, of course, but it's like, why would you make a movie that seems to preach the exact opposite? It seems strange to me.
It does. This movie was made at the height of the Red Scare in the 50s. The United States was terrified of Soviet communism infiltrating the country, invading, either real, like on the ground, or just like more insidiously. So this movie is also a metaphor, clearly, for an invasion from a foreign country. And religion, communism abolishes religion. So to make it so religious, this is the choice, is to make it very American at a time when American values were paramount, no pun intended, in the culture. So I see why. I just think it's maybe a little dated at this point.
That's an interesting point. That's a really good point. Yeah.
But the military, how do you feel about how the military is portrayed in this movie?
Yeah, it's strange. I feel like it's almost paradoxical at times because, like, this movie does play into Cold War paranoia. Like you said, it's very much about an invading enemy force, and we have to like fight back militarily to stop it. And the atomic bomb is even dropped on the Martians for that to happen. And yet, the atomic bomb is useless. Like, it doesn't do anything to the Martians. And the movie simultaneously is saying like the entire world is threatened by these Martians. So all the countries of the world need to band together to prevent it. Although, of course, in the movie, we don't see the United States and the Soviet Union banding together. We see the US and like so many other countries banding together. So it's interesting. It seems kind of like it's trying to do both at once. Like it's saying the nations of the world need to band together, and also it's saying that like the enemy will attack and you have to be ready for it. So I don't know. It's trying to have things both ways, I think. What do you think about that?
No, I do too. Like at times I was wondering, is this an anti-military piece? But the way it's presented is more pro-military, even though the military is failing and the real US military didn't want to take part in like the consulting of this film because of that, because they can't defeat in the movie the aliens. And yet there's a real raw attitude to the film.
Yeah.
That I'm confused by the presentation of the military in this.
Yeah. I wish I had a more satisfying interpretation, but I really do feel like the movie doesn't have a clear viewpoint on that, you know? Like I feel like it's trying to tap into those fears, but doesn't have like a clear moral outlook on them.
Yeah. So I'm left a little muddied. Ultimately, my feeling is that it's still pro-military.
Mm-hmm.
Again, considering the cultural background, it's Cold War. So this kind of movie is going to be pro-religion, pro-military, pro-America. Like that's what we do well, as opposed to the commies.
Yeah. I like that point a lot that you made where like, you know, communism believes that religion is like an opiate of the people and all that. So like to be super religious is to be anti-communist. I think that's a great point, and that probably goes a long way in explaining why this movie does emphasize that theme.
I know, but it's so like was that a conscious choice, or was it just like the cultural osmosis of people, of artists living when they did? And then how does this, when was the blacklisting? Like this is for a different podcast, but I'm fascinated. I got to look into George Pal's politics. Like I want to look into the politics of these creators, because politics is all over this film. It's a very conservative film.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think like later in the decade, we already talked about some of the more progressive sci-fi movies like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is so much an allegory for McCarthyism and like your friends and loved ones being suckered by this brainwashing and like just going along with the tide, you know? So later in the decade, there are great examples of progressive sci-fi movies, but this probably is not one of them. Anything else thematic that we want to talk about, or should we jump into our individual breakdowns?
I think we can go into our breakdowns.
Cool. I think just to start off with, in the good category, we have to talk about how amazing this movie looks. It's beautiful.
It's so good. Even with When Worlds Collide, like the artwork, the artistry in this movie, the craftsmanship, it's incredible.
Yeah, it really is. It's gorgeous, like bright Technicolor cinematography. The colors in this movie are astounding. You know, this is kind of the golden age, I think, of Technicolor. You think of some of those Powell Pressburger movies, like Niagara, an American movie from around this time, just like some of the most beautiful cinematography ever. And, you know, I'm not maybe putting War of the Worlds at the level of like The Red Shoes, for example, but it is just like incredibly beautiful. The special effects are phenomenal. Like, not just for their time. I agree with what you said before. They look better than CGI. And like, the level of like, again, artistry and care that goes into them, they are still astonishing, in my opinion.
I think I'm just going to say, if someone would be like, Vincent, what movie has the best special effects? I could say this movie, and it might not just be recency bias. I think War of the Worlds from 1953.
Yeah. Totally, yeah. And even the things that maybe could seem a little bit dated, like, you know, when we do see that army colonel, like, turned into a skeleton, it's like, yeah, this could be in a movie from 1953, and I love how it looks. It's so spectacular, and it, like, achieves that pulp sci-fi feeling that you want from a movie like this.
You know what? That scene in particular is so a part of Mars Attacks
Yeah.
in the 90s. Like you just see, oh, Tim Burton, like that's what happens in his movie. They get turned into skeletons by green rays. And clearly, we all know Mars Attacks is a riff on 50s sci-fi, and that's War of the Worlds right there.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, so good. When those three men are vaporized into ash, like I that's scary because again, I'm thinking about World War II, the victims of fire bombings, atomic bombings. I'm thinking about in War of the Worlds when they drop a bomb. It had been 9 years, 8 years since that had actually been done on a country. So I don't want listeners to lose the fact that to see that depicted in a movie like this was probably very startling, if not scary.
Yeah.
And then the Martians are still alive.
Yeah. Right. Like it does no good whatsoever. It's like mass destruction for no reason, you know? So maybe I don't know if that's really meant. I don't know if that's the message that the movie's trying to get across, but it is a startling moment for sure.
Mm-hmm. The model work, the miniature work. Yeah, it's astounding, incredible, terrific, remarkable. It's
yeah.
great.
It is. Yeah, it's a feast for the eyes and ears for sure. It's able to build suspense really well, like in that house scene where the war machine is like slowly going through the house. Some of the montages are like really exciting. Like when there's even just a moment where like it's a montage of a bunch of animals running away. That's all it is. We see horses like running down a hill and it's like so beautiful. And yeah, like every single moment has that level of, I'm going to use that phrase again, visual energy to it.
So good. Like the moments of action. I was on the edge of my seat. I was sucked in completely, lost in the story. It was so good. And then I think anytime we're away from that with our characters, that's the drawback of your effects being so good.
Yeah,
if we want to move on to more critical things.
No, it's a perfect transition, and you're totally right. Like, yeah, I mean, again, just the romantic subplot between the two leads is like not interesting at all. They don't have any personality, no depth. And sometimes that can be okay if the actors are charismatic enough or if just like the movie moves quickly enough. But in this case, I don't know if that's true. Like, I think there are some kind of like boring military exposition scenes, which also just like spend too much time on the human characters. And, you know, I mean, I would like, it is subjective, but like some of the thematic stuff we were just talking about, I would put that in the bad category too. Like there was the opportunity for at least a more complex and like ambiguous worldview, and the movie is not taking that approach.
Right. I agree. I think like even the preacher or the minister who gets blown away by this heat ray, he has a noble intention. He says we should greet these visitors with humanity and grace, which he should as a minister. I think that. But 3 men have already been vaporized. You know these are warmongering beings. So it rang extremely naive to me and unsupported by the character and the script. And that's that level of this is so overtly like Christian, but it's not complicated. And in fact, it's in contrast to everything the story has been should be telling this character up until this point. So that just rang hollow as much as a lot of the other religious stuff to me.
Yeah.
Although when his daughter, she witnesses her father get killed and she's screaming, I found that very scary.
Yeah. The great close up of her just like screaming in terror. Yeah.
Great acting. I believed it, you know.
Totally. And that, you know, that moment where, you know, well-intentioned Christian beliefs are like just immediately proven wrong. Like he's just vaporized, you know, he's like, that should be a moment for like maybe religion is not the cure-all that we think it is. But then that's the ending of the movie, you know?
And just like how it depicts the military, it's in conflict with itself because I thought, oh, is this an anti-religious movie? It is in that moment, but then ultimately, I guess the message is, like maybe, you can go through all the worst things. Your preachers will get killed, your churches will get blown up, but ultimately, God is still there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but thematically, in the making of this movie, all of that as executed is like contradicts itself. So I didn't track that if that was the intent.
Right. Yeah, and I think, kind of like you were saying with the military stuff too, it's almost like, again, the military proves to be ineffective, but still the movie does seem very like rah gung ho about that. So like, I don't know, the complexity is like baked into the story, and yet the movie is trying to just like shove that aside. You know what I mean?
I know. It's just
disappointing.
Yeah, like lean into something complicated. Instead, the complication comes from you movie just being in tension with itself.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. And that's interesting from like just thinking about the time that it was made and how it was made and all that. But like, it's frustrating at the same time with the movie itself.
Right. But man, those effects are so good.
Yeah, the effects are so good. And like, I do think it's a little bit more complicated. Like some of the scenes where like civilization is just like, going to the dogs. Like people are like attacking each other. They're like violently beating anybody who has a vehicle, which again is in the Spielberg version. I like some of those moments in the 1953 film because it's like, that's a little more complex. Like maybe probably humans would do that if they were facing the end of the world. But then again, it settles on this like totally neat, happy, tidy ending,
I'm glad you brought up that end of the world mob mentality because I found those very scary and because their action, I feel again the action is handled very well in this movie. I was getting like Last Man on Earth vibes. I loved when our main character's running through the empty streets of Los Angeles. Love that he's a man alone in this world that's ending. Great existential storytelling. Yeah, I loved all that. That was good.
Yeah, totally. And like if there had been any emotional connection at all between him and the female lead, like that would have been even more powerful,
Yeah.
What about campy? There's a lot of camp in this movie, of course.
Well, it's the mob. So I just had to laugh. So I forget the character names, but Gene Barry, he's our male lead. He plays Dr. Clayton. Okay. And Sylvia, played by Ann Robinson. So Sylvia and a bunch of the other scientists, they're hitting on the cure. They have vials of Martian blood. They're gonna synthesize and like find a cure. And they get on a yellow school bus to get out of Dodge. And you're watching this, and the school bus moves on, and then Dr. Clayton shows up. Like he's missed the bus. He's come out of the building. Like, where's the bus? And I'm thinking, no, movie. No, they would not just forget the main guy, the main scientist, the love interest. Someone should have been on the bus saying, hey, where's Dr. Clayton? That would have happened. So I found that very campy and cheesy and stupidly charming.
That's a good point. Do they try to explain it that like the mob is approaching the bus, so they just have to like get out of there as quickly as possible before they're attacked?
I didn't buy it though. But maybe.
No, you're right. It's ridiculous. Like at least Sylvia should have been like, oh, this person I'm supposed to be in love with. Maybe I'll wait for him.
Exactly.
That would make sense. Yeah. I also think the way that they supposedly fall in love is really campy and ridiculous, where they go to that square dance. Like they meet early in the movie and they have this kind of flirtation, and like Dr. Clayton is like, well, we have 24 hours. What do you have going on in this town? And she's like, well, there's this square dance. And like, yeah, there's this whole square dance scene. And it's like, it's very silly. Some of the like bit characters in that scene are really ridiculous too. And apparently that's all it takes for the two of them to fall in love. One square dance.
Yeah, it was a Western at that point with the hoedown and small town California. I liked it, but it was, I would say it was more campy than anything.
It was a choice. I'll just say
Yeah,
that.
it was a very American choice.
Yeah,
If you
good
want to
point.
read into it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, not a coincidence. I mean, I said this before, but I do think the Martian designs when they're like out of the spaceship is pretty goofy. Like like especially the moment where the Dr. Clayton throws an axe at one of the Martians and we like hear it scream and then we see it sort of like scuttle off screen like it's a Sesame Street Muppet or something. It's yeah, I mean like it's probably a good thing we only see like bits and pieces of those Martians cuz no disrespect, the design on those in particular probably is not great.
The design, yeah. Right, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was funny when like a guy at the like towards the very beginning of the movie after the meteor spaceship lands just like whacks it with a shovel. He doesn't know what it is, so he's like, "Yeah, this will work. This is a good way to figure out what's going on here." I thought that was ridiculous.
So relatable.
Yeah.
And in that scene the guys are like, "So you think this is radioactive?" And someone went, "Yeah." And nobody thinks to run away.
Yeah, exactly.
You all have leukemia now. I hope you understand that.
Right. Yeah. You're supposed to be nuclear scientists, nuclear physicists, right? Shouldn't you back away from that? I thought there was okay, just real quick. There's a funny moment after like there's a lot of devastation, like people on fire, like the aliens are attacking, the military is striking, so all this devastation. And then there's just a shot of like a kid by himself next to like an overturned ice cream cart, just eating an ice cream cone. It's like, why? This seems to like defeat the purpose of the scene. And like, who is this child? Maybe his parents are dead, which is like a very morbid thought, but like, why else would he be sitting here by himself, Yeah. I laughed out loud at that moment, even though it makes no sense.
Yeah, I feel like this movie starts off in a much darker place than it ends up, actually. With people being incinerated, and the tension and the horror is well crafted. And then by the end of the movie, I think there's much more of an action sensibility. It's like the kids' parents, they might be dead, but we're past that point. And we're just gonna have a little levity amidst the action. It doesn't not work for me. It's just where the tone goes.
I like that. Yeah, maybe it's an intentional moment of humor. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. All right. Well, as usual, I believe we've arrived at the end of our episode on Camp Kaiju, where we give the film a rating. And our tried and true rating system is, number 1, our highest rating. It is a timeless classic. It definitely stands the test of time. Number 2, there may be some antiquated moments, but overall it's great. It stands the test of time. Number 3, it may be historically significant or just fun, but it does not stand the test of time. And our lowest rating, it is not worth revisiting. It definitely does not stand the test of time. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to tell you, I think this comes in at number 2 for me from the top. It does have some antiquated moments of storytelling, meaning that it's not as tight of a story as it could be. The characters aren't dropped in as much as they could be. But this movie, I think, does stand the test of time. It is a feast for the eyes, and it's never boring. Like, sure, it might be a little too simple character-wise, whatever. But come on, I mean, we're talking about 50s science fiction. This thing is a classic, so I'm kind of between both ratings. It does stand the test of time with some caveats, I suppose. But nah, I loved it. Again, I'm gonna watch it 2 more times with 2 different audio tracks.
Yeah. So, were you between the first and second rating, or the second and third rating?
The first and second.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I'm also going to give it our second rating. Although I might be between the second and third ratings, to be honest. But I'm going to land on the second one. It does stand the test of time. Yeah, everything that you said, I mean, special effects, the visuals, outstanding, amazing. Like, this movie is still really incredible to watch. And, at the same time, it's disappointing. Like, if the movie had opted for complexity, opted for, like, actual humans, like human emotions, It could have been an utter masterpiece, like truly one of the best sci-fi movies of the 50s. It isn't, it's a classic of the 50s in a way, but like it could have been so much better. Whereas the novel, I know it's always tricky business, like comparing the adaptation to the novel, but like if it had like stayed true to some of H.G. Wells' original ideas, it could have been truly groundbreaking and like an utter masterpiece. And if we cared at all about the people, then it could have been very emotional and like truly riveting. So I think this movie is great, but almost entirely due to the visuals and special effects, and that's about it. And the story is compelling because of the special effects, I think.
But that is so true too, because you're right, man. Like I'm so in love with these special effects, unabashedly so. But thinking about the great sci-fi movies that do combine their effects with character work, Planet of the Apes comes to mind, which is I think a flawless film. I don't know, man. I'm thinking about Godzilla.
Yeah.
The characters in that movie are so rich. And we can go on and on.
Yeah. I mean, I really love them from the following year. And like them special effects is not as good as the special effects here. It doesn't look as amazing as War of the Worlds, of course, but like it's a more interesting movie. I think it's a more progressive and kind of like socially aware movie. And I think the humans are actually sort of interesting in that movie. Invasion of the Body Snatchers too. I love, both the 50s version and the 70s version. So, like all that just to say War of the Worlds is incredible in some ways and sorely lacking in other ways, but it still does stand the test of time.
Yeah. Listeners, let us know what you think. There's so much to dig into with this movie, so many interpretations of this movie, of other adaptations of the book. I mean, it's like, but also what a credit to the story that it can be molded for so many different tastes and sensibilities, and it can be set in so many different locations because its themes are universal. Like what would happen if your country is invaded? A lot of people understand that feeling now as well as in history. And we're fortunate that we in the United States are not experiencing that, but we can get political, but we in the United States certainly bring that to other people. We are the Martians in a lot of ways, right? So I think in Wells's spirit, this story confronts us with that. And what we have to decide is, what are we going to do about that?
Well said. Yeah. That's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah. I'll end on one other note. I never realized until watching this movie, and I might be naive, I never realized Independence Day is a War of the Worlds story.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. In like when we're talking about the good stuff, like there's a shot in War of the Worlds of like a building blowing up. I think it might be Big Ben, or it's like that kind of a clock tower type building.
It's in LA. It's like the LA City Hall or something.
Yeah, that's it. You're right. But it blows up in like exactly the same way as the buildings in Independence Day. Like the White House, it's like the same moment,
And it's, again, masterful. It's so good.
Yeah. I mean, Independence Day, a fairly campy movie in itself, but like it definitely like very entertaining, like great Hollywood movie making,
Mm-hmm.
So, but no, you're right. Like, Independence Day steals so much from this movie.
It really does.
Even like the military like trying to defeat the aliens with a nuclear missile, and that proves to be useless,
I know.
Man, yeah. Thanks again for hanging out with us, friends. Please rate and review the show and follow us on patreon.com/campkaiju for additional videos, reviews, merchandise, and more. Other ways to get in touch: campkaiju@gmail.com, campkaijupodcast.com, Instagram, and our voicemail number 612-470-2612. Camp Kaiju is recorded in Minneapolis, St. Paul with Mina's Mailbox music by Ben Cook Feltz. Thanks, friends, and until next time, stay campy. Camp Kaiju is brought to you by Zach Linder and the Zach Pack, powered by Coldwell Banker Realty. Whether you're looking for your dream home, savvy investment property, or expert guidance in home rehab and flipping, the Zach Pack has you covered. Check the link in the show notes for more information.
What's the idea, Buck? Gonna dig for gold?
You think you're kidding? It's gonna be like having a gold mine in our own backyard.
I'm gonna get a closer look at it.
Boy, you could try AIDS on that thing.